Lindsay, you've muted yourself. We can't hear you. Start again.
Well, you just missed the best introduction. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our session today, Waste Not, Want Not, Bringing Waste Management to Life. My name is Lindsay Lunau. I'm with the City of Calgary. I'm an environmental outreach coordinator, and I'm going to be acting in your role as moderator today. You might be wondering why City of Calgary folks are on the call here with an ACE Environmental Symposium, and it's because we have such a strong partnership together in bringing EcoSchools Canada here to Calgary and working really closely to achieve our objectives together. So I'm really excited to be part of this session today with two wonderful presenters. First, Stephanie Southgate from Green Calgary, and Michelle Diaz, my colleague here at the City of Calgary. Throughout this session, we're going to be sharing a lot of really useful resources that you can use with your students. And we will be providing a copy of the presentation with full active links as well as other resources to you. So don't feel like you have to write down the links or worry about that. Afterwards, you can go to the ACE website, you just enter your name and your email, and we'll send you the whole resource package for today. I do want to note, of course, that this session is being recorded. So if you think it would be great for a colleague, feel free to forward it over to them, or if you miss any of it because you get kicked out, you can always come back, and all those recordings will be available on the Alberta Council for Environmental Education website. We will be taking a few pauses throughout the session to ask questions, and I'll be monitoring the chat, so feel free to pop your questions in there. And just to give you some context, this workshop is part of the two-day environmental symposium titled Hand in Hand, Working Together Towards a Sustainable Calgary. And the symposium represents a collaboration between the Alberta Council for Environmental Education, the City of Calgary, and our environmental education community members like Green Calgary. The symposium does consist of 12 exciting sessions where we are covering a range of topics, including EcoSchools Canada certification, biodiversity, water management, waste management, climate change, and Indigenous perspectives. All the sessions feature multiple speakers, including seasoned environmental educators and City of Calgary experts. So to better meet your teaching needs, we've divided these sessions into an elementary and secondary stream. This workshop that you're in right now is specifically designed for K-6 teachers, but we do have lots of useful information. If you're teaching older students, you're certainly welcome to keep viewing, but you might want to check out our parallel session with the same folks. It's Michelle, Stephanie, and I tomorrow for Cradle to Grave at 10:45. And as I mentioned earlier, all the sessions are being recorded, so we'll record that session tomorrow if you'd rather check it out later. For those of you who may not have heard of the Alberta Council for Environmental Education, they're a small nonprofit whose mission is to advance environmental education in Alberta's K-12 schools. And their vision is that Alberta's students are environmentally literate and equipped with the knowledge and skills to help create a sustainable future. Here's our quick outline for today. We're going to start off with Michelle Diaz, who's going to walk us through how waste is managed at the City of Calgary, which is a fascinating topic, and we could spend the whole hour on it. But we will then pass it over to Stephanie Southgate, and she's going to demonstrate how you can conduct a waste audit with your students and take steps to reduce waste at your school. Michelle and Stephanie are then going to talk about the importance of positive framing. And we know that is so important in schools today. I will then follow up with a wrap up for the session. And as I said before, there will be opportunities to ask questions. So post your questions in the chat, and we'll turn the video off at the very end in case you want to turn your camera on and ask your question that way. So we would be remiss if we didn't acknowledge that the city is located on Treaty 7 territory, the traditional meeting grounds and gathering place, traveling route of the Blackfoot Nations, including the Siksika, Piikani, and Kainai, as well as Tsuut'ina Nation and Stoney Nakoda First Nations, and Métis Region number 3. We further acknowledge that the long history of Indigenous peoples is inextricably tied to this land, and that a unique relationship exists between the Indigenous peoples and the natural world. This relationship, which is based above all else on harmony with Mother Earth has allowed the original inhabitants of these lands to survive and thrive for thousands of years. As the Truth and Reconciliation Commission has recognized, reconciliation will never occur unless we're able to be reconciled with the earth as well. So today we honor and acknowledge the wonderful knowledge keepers, scientists, artists, youth, and teachers like yourselves who seek to move us forward in reconciliation. And we also want to acknowledge another reality that teachers are facing this year with COVID and the many challenges and constraints that teachers like you have to deal with because of it. We are mindful that you're dealing with a lot at the moment, and we want to express our deepest and most heartfelt gratitude for your dedication in keeping our students engaged in learning. You are the true heroes, and we're so happy to be here to support you in the important work that we do. So sorry, before I pass it over to Michelle, I really would love to get a sense of who's in the room with us today. So we invite you to please introduce yourselves in the chat. We'd love to know if that's your real name that you logged in with, and which school you teach at, and the subjects or grades that you teach. So Michelle, I'll invite you to go ahead and share your screen and bring yourself off mute. Oh, sorry, you can't because I'm sharing.
That's right, but thank you, Lindsay. Thanks for that introduction, Lindsay. I really like it, brought a tear to my eye. So
mine as well.
I know. That was really beautiful. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. If you could just hang on, Lindsay, until you see that my screen is there.
Yeah, so we're not seeing the full screen version, just the like PowerPoint version. Okay, there, you're in full screen. That's great, Michelle.
Thank you so much. All right, well, thanks for joining us today. I will be talking about how the city is doing and how we are moving the community towards zero waste. To start off with here. So I do want you to know that the city does have a goal of achieving zero waste by the year 2036. If you weren't aware of that, I think that's a pretty cool thing for teachers to know and to be able to share with students as well. And that basically means that by the year 2036, we hope to be landfilling nothing. So we're going to be diverting all of our waste to other areas. And also, one thing I want you to take a moment to reflect on is the waste hierarchy. And if there's anything that can be a takeaway from today, it's this little upside down triangle, or right side up triangle, if you think of it that way. And we often think of recycling and composting as something really important that we can do for the environment, and it absolutely is. But what we want to do as educators is move ourselves and our students up the waste hierarchy. So we want to go from recycling and, you know, the impact that makes, which is not as great as the impact that reusing makes on the environment. And then obviously reducing the amount of waste we make is the ultimate goal. So we want to take the enthusiasm that a lot of people have right now for recycling and really move people up the scale. And we'll be talking about some ways to do that today for sure. The city has a lot of ways that we are helping our city to reduce waste. And you can see that, you know, our recycling programs, composting programs, we have a lot of programs out there that citizens can engage in. But what I really want to draw your attention here to is that big bar along the bottom that shows that education and engagement, this is really the driving force behind making all the rest of it work. So my job, for example, is to help educate the public as much as possible so that we can understand why we want to be using the programs that we have in place and how we can use them correctly and actually help everyone thrive together. A little bit of good news, first of all, I just want to point out that at 2007 to 2019, we've actually reduced our waste by half. And what's in Calgary's black carts in 2007 is actually half, or it's twice as much as it is today, which is really great. Calgary is doing a great job of using the other diversion programs, which is wonderful to see. So first of all, what do we do with waste in Calgary? Well, we've got a 3-stream system. We've got garbage, we've got compost, and we've got recycling. And that's whether you live in a single family home or an apartment complex, townhouse, or condo. And it's also across all business sectors as well, and industry, as well as institutions like schools and hospitals. So you need, it's actually a bylaw that everyone has access to those 3 streams, basically wherever they are. And that's a pretty huge step forward that we've taken in the past few years, and that's really great. I want to point out where our garbage comes from. We often think of it coming from our homes because we're the ones who take our garbage out at home, but we also contribute to the garbage that comes from everywhere we go. And that means not only at school and at home, but also when we're at school, when we're at our workplaces, any businesses that we visit, malls and restaurants, hotels, all those things. We also contribute to construction and demolition waste. So when sidewalks are put in, taken out, roads and bridges and all kinds of things. So there's a lot of ways that we make the garbage. Now, where does our waste go? The waste that isn't, so we obviously try to divert as much waste as we can from landfill, but anything that's actually going into the garbage or the black cart goes to the landfill in the city. And the landfill, first of all, is a safe place to store our waste. The sanitary landfills that we have are specially constructed to hold our waste and keep it from harming our watershed, the groundwater, and also protect the surrounding communities as well. It's a safe way to store garbage. The thing about it is that it is really expensive. So we would like to landfill as little as we possibly can and divert as much as we possibly can, because we're not getting any more landfill space, and we want to use the space that we have as wisely as possible and make it last into the future. Now, one of the biggest myths about landfills is people believe that inside a landfill, everything is just going back to nature. And I remember my mom telling me when I asked her, what's going on inside those landfills? She said, everything is just turning into dirt. It's all going back to nature. And I think people have this idea that banana peels are helping couches and everything is melding together and somehow going away. And that's absolutely not the case. Our garbage in the landfill is packed very tightly and mixed with dirt all the time, garbage and dirt together. So we create a very solid hill. That leaves no room for air. And as a result, any microbes that would be breaking down any of this food or yard waste or any kind of organic material cannot live. And so these items are preserved very well. I'm going to show you some pictures of things that came out of a landfill from the 70s. So here we've got a newspaper we can read. It's very common to read perfect newspapers that come out of the landfills. This one is from 1921, the oldest one we've found. So you can see that things are well preserved. These are chicken bones. Kids always ask, like they think that these are human remains, which is very dramatic, as children can be. Here is a jar of mayonnaise. It still looks like a jar of mayonnaise from the 70s. And of course, grass. Grass is a major problem in our landfills. It has been because any kind of organic material, that's anything that came from a living thing that is in the landfill, is producing CO2 and methane as it sits there. And sort of very slowly breaks down anaerobically without oxygen, or you can think of it as sort of rotting. And in the summertime, from residential waste, grass can be up to 50% of that, and that is a lot. We do accept grass now in green card. However, we really would encourage you to leave your grass on the lawn and let it fly. Okay, so what we want to do instead of put things into the landfill is divert as much as possible. And here are some examples of programs that we have here in Calgary that we want residents to know about and be using. So we've got compost, we've got recycling, we've got the bottle depots, of course, so we can get our money back for beverage containers. We've got the fire stations, where there are 6 fire stations in the city, and our 3 landfills actually accept household hazardous waste. We need people to be recycling their electronics as well. And then anything that you don't want anymore that still looks useful to someone else, we want people to be donating, or of course selling on Kijiji. So these are some examples of our diversion programs. And I'm going to point you to some resources right now. I'm not going to talk about what goes into compost and what goes into recycling right now, but here are some really good resources, and you'll get this PowerPoint afterwards, of course. You can find out exactly how and why it's important to put the right things into recycling, and same for green cards. So I would encourage you to check out those sites. These are great places to visit with your class, with your students. Send your students here to get this information and report back. Just so you know, you can actually sign up for reminders for when your garbage days are. Of course, you can always call 311 if you've got any problems with any of your carts or any questions at all about your waste streams wherever you live. And if you're ever wondering about a certain item like a certain type of light bulb or a car seat or something that you're trying to get rid of and you're not sure how, you can just type it into this function that we have at our website, and it will tell you exactly how you can recycle it and best dispose of it. Here are some videos as well. We've got the video about our recycling center and how that works. We've got our composting facility, and then this one is really, really good. It talks about why it's important to compost and why it's better to do that than to landfill. So I would really recommend these. They're short. They're like 5 or 6 minutes max, and this one's even 2. So those are really great to watch with students. A couple of other resources. We've got our waste quiz. Anyone can take that waste quiz. And this recycle game, it looks like it's cartoony, so it kind of looks like it's for kids. It is for anybody. Anyone can play this game and sometimes, you know, make mistakes and figure stuff out and learn. So I would encourage you to check that one out as well. You may know about our school tours that we've offered for years, and where you come and visit the landfill and the composting facility. Of course, we're not able to run those right now. Hopefully, we're you know, planning to go ahead for the fall. If all goes well, we'll see how that pans out. But in the meantime, we do have a food waste reduction lesson plan that we've kind of put out in lieu of our school tours this year. And I would really encourage you to check that out. It's got some great ideas. You can tap in to them as much or as little as you want, and make it last like a day, an hour a day, or even make it last a week or a month if you want to really get deeper into it. So there's lots of options there. And I am going to stop sharing my screen now, and I'm going to take some questions, I think. Lindsay, is that correct?
Sorry, Michelle.
Yeah, I was going to say I think we have a couple of minutes for questions right now. If anybody has any questions for about what I just talked about there.
Oh yeah, that's right. I actually don't have any questions coming into the chat right now, but if you want to just monitor it, and then we can pass it over to Stephanie for her part. And I would encourage everyone, if you do have questions, feel free to pop those into the chat.
Okay, thanks, Lindsay.
Should I share my screen now, Lindsay? We good to carry on?
Yeah, absolutely, Stephanie. Please go ahead and share your screen. I'll let you know when we can see it.
Thank you.
Yep. And there has been some chat going on that maybe the sound isn't great for folks. So if people want to let me know how the sound is in the chat, we'd also appreciate that. And Stephanie, you're good to go.
Well, thank you. So now we're going to shift a little bit to think more on a global scale to start with, before we move on to think about how we can really use a lot of this knowledge within our classrooms. So I'd like to start off by talking about the Sustainable Development Goals. So these are a series of goals developed by the United Nations in 2015. And they're a set of goals for things that we want to achieve as a global community by 2030. So these goals are very ambitious, but I would say that's a very good thing. So the 2 goals that I'm particularly interested in for this workshop are goal number 12 and 13. So 12 being responsible consumption and production, and goal number 13 being climate action. So if you go to the Sustainable Development Goals website, which is just listed at the bottom of this page, and there's lots of really interesting facts on that website. So really interesting things you could talk to your students about and really put some of these goals into perspective. So when we think about global citizenship, I think this is something that's really important for us to be considering right now. So for our students, they will have grown up hearing about environmental concerns, climate change, the climate chaos. It's such a normal thing for our students now. They'll have grown up hearing about this. So because of that, I think it's really important for us to now think about how we can move past just talking about these issues with our students and moving towards empowering them and showing them how to take action on these issues that they really care about. And it's very likely for our students that the environment is going to be a part of their job in one way or another. So maybe they'll move towards the environmental sector and work in this sector directly. Maybe they'll work in something else, but the environment's still going to become an increasing part of that job. So even if you don't work in the environmental sector at all, you might find that the place of work that you work in has new waste reduction targets. Maybe it's emission reduction targets. So increasingly, we're finding that's just becoming a part of everyone's job and becoming the norm. We're also seeing that the environment is becoming an increasingly important voting issue. So it's really important for our students to be environmentally literate and to really understand these issues if that's going to be a voting issue for them. And finally, I think it's really important for us to mention that our students are the influencer generation. So I'm sure we could sit and talk all day about how social media has negative impacts, but I think it's important for us to also recognize the positive impacts it can have too. So if our students are taking environmental action in schools, they have access to a huge audience straight away through social media, and they can share all of their environmental actions with those audiences. So I think there's a lot of potential in social media as well as those negative impacts too. So now we're going to think about how we can use some of these environmental topics in a context-based and hands-on way within our classrooms. So research has shown that hands-on learning helps students retain knowledge. It creates an engaging learning environment, helps students to develop critical thinking skills, and it can be much easier for students to relate this to a real-world context. So now I'm going to walk you through how you can do a waste audit within your classroom or within your school. So there's a few different ways that we can approach this. It sounds initially like it can be really messy and disgusting, but it really doesn't have to be. There's lots of different ways to manage that. And particularly in this time where we need to keep everything very clean, there's ways that we can still do these hands-on learning topics in a sort of safer way. So there's a difference between a waste audit and a waste assessment. I'll be talking about both today. So a waste audit is a really thorough survey where we're weighing out the garbage. And an assessment is just a visual assessment. So we're just looking at the garbage and making our judgments based on that. So the first step of our waste audit is to collect the garbage. So we're going to do this for a set amount of time. This might be just for a day, it might be a week, it might be 2 weeks, but have a very set amount of time that you'll collect that garbage. And this might be something that you want to do just on a classroom level. That might be the easiest way to do this. Or if you want to get the whole school involved, you could get your custodial staff involved as well and keep that garbage for, say, a week from the whole school. The next thing we need to do once we've collected that garbage over a set amount of time is to sort the garbage. So again, there's two different ways that we can do this. If you're going to do the full audit, you'll need to sort out that garbage and weigh it. So you can sort it in a few different ways. That might be into garbage, composting, or recycling. Or you could get very thorough with it and start to separate into plastics, into papers, and really separate all of that garbage. So once you've separated the garbage, then you'll weigh it to see just how much type of waste you're producing. The other option, and probably the cleaner option for right now, is more of a visual assessment. So if you keep the garbage for a set amount of time and just store that in clear bags, don't fill the bags too full because you're going to need to be able to move the garbage around inside. Once you've got all the garbage in these clear bags, students can just sort of move the bags around, see what garbage is inside, and then just make notes of that on a piece of paper. So this is a much cleaner option for right now. Hopefully by the fall, we'll be able to get back to really doing our full waste audits in schools. So step 3 is to discuss your findings. So what did you find? What surprised you? And I think this is a really important time with the students to bring up the positives and negatives associated with recycling and composting. So it's really easy for us to get that feel-good factor, as Michelle was saying, with recycling, but we really want students to move beyond that now. So thinking about actually recycling is a really energy intensive process. How can we move past that and actually reduce the amount of waste that we're producing in the first place, rather than just diverting it correctly? Our next step will be to make an action plan. So as I said earlier, we want to move students beyond just learning about environmental topics, but really empowering them to take action. So this is where the action plan comes in. So the action plan should be thinking about how we can divert our waste correctly, but also how we can reduce the amount of waste. So there's lots of different ways that you might want to do that within your class. And I'd really encourage you to let the students take the lead on this and come up with their own ideas so that they really buy into this project. But some things that I've seen schools do in the past is to make a used paper box. So if a piece of paper is just used on one side, they might choose to put this in a box, and then if they just need a piece of paper for making notes in the future, they just use one of these pieces of paper instead. You might start to choose a green pupil of the week, particularly with elementary classes. This could encourage some competition in the class and make it a real challenge. And there could be recycling monitors. And from a teacher level as well, maybe we could rethink about the resources that we're printing and how we're really setting that example for our students. So your action plan could take a few days. It could be over an entire term. The time frame can really vary, so it's completely up to you of what fits in with your class. So step 5 is to repeat the waste audit or assessment. So this is a really important step. So we've done our initial assessment, we've taken action. It's so important for us now to see how effective that's actually been. So you'll repeat the audit or assessment after a set amount of time. So I'd encourage you to give enough time to really see the impacts of this. So give it a few weeks at least before you repeat this step. And then a really important step at the end is to celebrate the results. So your students have put in so much work into this. They've been sorting through garbage, really rethinking how they create waste. So it's a great idea to celebrate that success and give them a chance to share these results with other people. So there's lots of different ways that you can share these results with other people. The Mayor's Environmental Expo could be a really great place to do this. Or you might want to nominate your team for an Alberta Emerald Award. So there's lots of awards and different ways that you can share. If you've been working with an organization throughout this process, I'd encourage you to reach out to them, because organizations always love to share the success stories, and they'd be more than happy to share your class's success. So there's lots of different ways that we can incorporate waste into the curriculum. So maybe it'll be a direct curriculum tie, especially if you're a grade 4 teacher teaching waste in our world. But if you're not teaching grade 4, or you just want to incorporate this into your curriculum somewhere, there's lots of different ways we can do that. So it might be through science, if you're talking about climate change or using natural resources. It could be in social studies, maybe you're talking about global citizenship or governance. And this year is a particularly interesting year to be talking about that in social studies, with our new law for waste reduction and the ban on single-use plastics in Canada. You could incorporate waste into art lessons by turning waste into art. You can incorporate math lessons and measuring throughout the waste audit. Or you could think about this in career lessons as well. So there's lots of different ways that you can talk about this in the curriculum, even if it doesn't initially seem like you have a very clear curriculum tie. So I really encourage you with this project to just dig a little bit deeper. So moving beyond sorting our waste correctly, we really want to think about how we can generate less waste and maybe be a bit more minimalist. So maybe that's going to be to try an eco challenge. It's really up to you how you approach this in your classroom. I just encourage you just to take that step beyond just recycling and composting and to really think a little bit more about how to reduce waste. Okay, so I think, is it time for some more questions now, Lindsay, or do we have any that are coming in?
So Stephanie, I don't have any questions coming in for you. And I know that you're new at Green Calgary and may not have had a chance to be in the classroom doing waste audits, but historically, has anyone at Green Calgary shared with you some strange things they found during their waste audits?
You know, I haven't actually heard of anything strange that we found in the waste audits before. I've heard like that students initially, it's a disgusting thing to do, but I think after a few minutes, from what I've heard, they get very involved and absolutely love it as soon as they're sorting through the garbage. So.
I know kids do really like to get their hands dirty, that's for sure. So again, I'll encourage folks to put any questions in the chat if they may have them. But Michelle, I know that the city does sometimes do waste audits as well, and we've done some like for our own corporate waste. Is there anything strange that we found in bins where they shouldn't have been?
You know, if you want to, I definitely have some strange stories, but mainly, you know, there were some strange things coming in at the beginning of our CART program. So when Blue Cart first came out, it was, you know, people were putting all kinds of things in there. That doesn't happen anymore. Luckily, people have really, you know, just they're embracing it now. They know what they're supposed to do. But we found a samurai sword. And a full bottle of Jack Daniels. So there's two for you right there.
That's awesome. And we do have a question coming into the chat. So I know that it's often been a discussion around our office, the trade-off between safety and health and environment. And the question from the teacher here is that they're finding it hard to get staff to join in the recycling practices with COVID. They have to be responsible for emptying their own bins. Do you have any ideas that might help?
Stephanie, is anything coming to your mind?
So I actually, when I was teaching, I set up a recycling box in my classroom before we really had recycling in the school. So I would just find that every couple of days, maybe once a week, I would just put it into a box and I would just take their recycling home with me. So I guess that's one way around it. I think it's best if you can get the students involved. Having said that, I just know at the moment it's difficult, and maybe we don't all want to be sharing those and touching the same things at the moment. So, yeah,
and Michelle, do we? Oh, sorry, Stephanie.
Oh no.
Michelle, do we have some resources from the city on the commercial waste side that might be able to touch base with the staff and provide them with some information or resources?
Do you mean like recycling during COVID type ideas? Yeah. You know, I am not sure if we are, you know, have sort of like said we're, you know, incorporated COVID into our messaging right now so much. Yeah. I mean, what I can say about there's a lot of things that are going into the waste stream right now that shouldn't be, such as masks and gloves and, you know, baby wipes and like, you know, Lysol wipes and things like that. Those are not recyclable items. Those need to go into the garbage. And so, you know, definitely it is tough right now. I would say, you know, what we can do is just like the best we can do. And you know, right now it's probably just not, it's best not to like die on that hill at this time. There's enough that's stressing us out right now. So I think it's just, you know, really looking at that balance between safety and the environment and sanity as well. So, you know, get students to do as much as they can. Students can take their own things home too. There's always that, you know, if you've got paper and you go, guys, this paper you can take home and recycle for yourselves in your own bins at home. That's always a great option to offer people. so that nobody else has to be touching their stuff. But just as far as like, city policy that we've put out, I don't think there's anything in particular, except that, we are getting that extra bit of contamination sometimes from the, cleaning or PPE type materials that shouldn't be in our recycling.
Yeah, and that's a great suggestion.
Or compost. Yeah. Garbage.
Yeah, my kids are bringing home a lot more paper than they used to, and of course, anything that's left over from their lunches is coming home now. They're not even allowed to use the recycle bins or the garbage at school. So maybe, Cindy, that will help out with you. I don't see any other questions right now, so I'll pass it back over to you for the discussion around positive framing, which I think is so very important.
Okay, thank you. And Stephanie is going to guide. She's going to operate the controls here as we go, so we don't have to reshare screens. So rethinking waste, Steph was just talking about the hierarchy and how we really want to get up to the reducing part. And so I like to think of this on a scale of 1 to 10. If 1 is something we can do for the environment and 10 is the best thing we can do for the environment, it's really interesting to see where you would put certain behaviors. So for example, if we take a Ziploc bag and you use a Ziploc bag, you could use that one time and throw it in the garbage. And that would probably be rated as a 1 out of 10 because you didn't litter it. At least you put it in the garbage, okay? If you were to recycle that Ziploc bag, because it is stretchy plastic, you could recycle it with your plastic bags. That would be about a 3 out of 10. So, recycling, as Stephanie mentioned, it has a lot of positives, and then there are a lot of negatives to it as well. There's a lot of energy that it kind of uses along the way. And then if you were to reuse that Ziploc bag 2 times, 20 times, that would be a 7 out of 10. And then if you were to take it to a 10 out of 10 and actually reduce the Ziploc bag, what you'd be doing is not buying the Ziploc bags anymore. And you'd be using jam jars and yogurt containers and other types of containers. You don't even need to buy them. We are inundated with them all the time in what we buy our products in, and you can reuse all kinds of containers. So I stopped buying Ziploc bags about 7 or 8 years ago, and I have not looked back. I don't miss them. In fact, I still have a lot in my drawers that people give me Ziploc bags filled with different things that I just wash them and keep them. Or if I get frozen items that come in really good quality Ziplocs, I'll keep those and reuse them as many times as I like for freezing things and that kind of thing. Or spices often come in really good Ziploc bags. So I have a lot of Ziplocs and I don't buy them. So that'd be a good example of how to move something up the scale. And you can basically take anything and sort of play with it on that scale and say, how can we move ourselves further to the top? Okay, we're going to talk about eco-guilt now. This is definitely something that we all feel, and it's something that sometimes is believed to perhaps motivate us to do the right thing, but more often than not, what happens when we feel guilty about our behaviors toward the environment is it becomes overwhelming and paralyzing. And instead of taking action, we actually don't do anything at all because it feels like, well, what's the point? And so we really want to try to get away from eco-guilt as much as possible because we know that it can negatively affect us and then demotivate action. You may have heard no tragedy before grade 4. So in general, you want to keep the messaging as positive and empowering as possible, before grade 4. And that's usually a good rule of thumb. One thing that we don't do enough of is make space in our lessons to talk about our feelings around the issues that are coming up. So sometimes the things that we talk about, like endangered species or climate change, they can be pretty heavy topics. And sometimes we don't give airtime to like, how do you feel about this? Yeah, that is scary. Is it sad? Is it scary to you? What does it make you feel like doing? And action is the antidote to despair. So, it's what we really want to get people to is to feel empowered and take action. So just like if you're feeling kind of sad, what can really make you feel better is to do something nice for someone else. if you're feeling, that, the environment is presenting a lot of problems to us, taking action actually empowers you to feel better, and it does sort of assuage some of that eco guilt. So that's really where we want to get our students. And this can really be helped along by celebrating any of the small wins that come along. So any way that you can celebrate the small things that people are doing and encourage those little behaviors and behavior changes is really, really important. I'm going to introduce a website to you. I really encourage you to take a look at it. It really affected the way that I think, and it's kind of around your beliefs and biases that we all have, and then how we can talk positively to really empower our students. So it's the Positive Communication Toolkit that's listed here. And so what we want to do is encourage our beliefs to be that change is possible. The problem is solvable. Actions are part of a bigger solution. So it's not just us. We are part of a bigger solution. We can recover, and we all of our actions are actually meaningful. So we want to really encourage those and avoid, people thinking that this is too big, it's too late, we can't do anything. If you're not perfect about it, then you're a hypocrite. We're not perfect. No one can be. That's impossible. You don't need to make big sacrifices. And we want to actually believe that we all have a part to play in the conservation effort. So it's not those people that are conserving, it's all of us that are helping to do this. So I think that's really the message that we want to give our students. And then that feel-good factor that Steph was talking about earlier, just in conclusion, when we're trying to create these critical thinkers, what we really want to do is make sure we're having those conversations, make sure we're analyzing the conversations and talking about our feelings and whether they're, are they reflected in reality, or is there something we can do about them? And the other thing is that behavior change isn't always convenient. So maybe recycling is easy, and so we feel good, it's easy, and so we do it, and then we feel good, and then so we really like recycling. But we want to take it up that hierarchy again to go into the reuse areas. We want to have clothing swaps and use Kijiji and buy things from Kijiji and donate to secondhand stores, shop at secondhand stores, and reduce as much as possible. And it can even get, and you can do all kinds of really interesting challenges. I know Steph mentioned a lot of really great things, but to try and get out of your comfort zone and into something where you're actually going to challenge yourself to make changes. So a couple of really small things could be, we have a single-use plastic ban coming up in Canada. And so maybe we want to get used to, bringing a spoon with us around in our pockets everywhere we go, or in our backpacks, so that we don't need, if we decide to get ice cream one day, we don't need to, take that spoon. Even now, we're starting those habits now. There's also a buy nothing movement, for example, that's another great challenge. So you could have a buy nothing day, you could have a buy nothing week. I actually had a buy nothing year in my life. It was back in 2005, but it actually really changed the way that I think about consuming and my consumer habits. And it actually brought me so much peace, because I realized that, there's a lot of reasons why we buy things, and sometimes it has nothing to do with what we actually need. So to take a look at that could be a really great way to encourage your students to make some behavior change. I think that I am going to pass it back to Steph right now to talk about some of these teaching resources, and then we're going to open it up to questions. So please do, if you have, you want more ideas, please ask. Go ahead, Steph.
Oh, thanks, Michelle. So if you are interested in teaching about waste in your classroom, we do have a number of resources available. So at the moment, we're offering virtual workshops. So we drop off sanitized materials at your school and then pick them up afterwards and deliver the workshop virtually. So we have workshops focusing on waste, on water, on energy, and we have a new Power of Nature program for grade 5. And we also have citizen science programs as well. And so on Earth Day this year, on the 22nd of April, we're going to be hosting a free virtual workshop for schools. This is for grades 3 to 9. And so this is really focusing on waste reduction for this year. So it's just going to be an hour-long workshop looking at how we can reduce waste and really rethink waste in our classrooms. So if you're interested in that, you can register on our website. Like I said, it's all free for schools this year. And we also have a waste audit program as well with Green Calgary. So with this program, we can come into your school to help you with the full waste audit. So we do 2 waste audits with you, write a report for you to help generate the action plan within your class. And this is something that we're also offering as a virtual and drop-off kit this year as well. So rather than sorting through all the waste, because we know that would be difficult for this year, we actually provide laminated pictures of waste so that students can sort of go through the motions of doing a waste audit, but in a sort of safe and managed way for this year. So it is something we're continuing to offer. And then we're hoping to get back to the full waste audit program from September. And if you're looking to do environmental projects with your class, there's a lot of grants available. So I know a lot of these projects will require a bit of extra funding rather than what you might just have for your classroom budget. And so if you come into this link after the presentation today, it's a link to the ACE website, and it lists a lot of different environmental grants that you can apply for. Some of them are Calgary based, some of them are Alberta based, and there's a lot of funding out there. So definitely check out these resources. So thank you so much for joining our session today, everybody. So I think we'll move over now to some questions.
Okay, perfect. Well, we don't have anything coming into the chat right now, but Stephanie, I'm also interested to know if Green Calgary is participating in the 100% virtual free Mayor's Environment Expo in June as well.
Yes, we will be. Yeah, so we will be leading a few workshops at the Mayor's Expo this year. Yes, I'd really encourage everybody to check out the Mayor's Expo sessions as well.
Okay, that's wonderful. And Cindy's just making a note that the grants are great, and she's gotten them twice and was able to buy great things for the school, which is definitely true. And ACE has a really wonderful website with a lot of those resources. And maybe that's just a perfect segue for me over to ACE's website to wrap this up. We're so pleased to be able to work so closely with the folks at the Alberta Council for Environmental Education. They do such great work in supporting teachers in the classrooms. And here, what they've tried to do is to work on connections between curriculum, environment, and sustainability for a whole bunch of different areas. They cover off areas related to nature and place, Indigenous perspectives, climate change, and then they work with us at the City of Calgary to link to different environmental and climate action plans and strategies. So here on the slide is just an example. You know, it's the easiest one for waste, which is the grade 4 waste in our world, but you can see that ACE has made those really great connections. And if you visit their website, this is actually what it looks like. So they have those curriculum links listed for kindergarten to grade 3, 4 to 6, and 7 to 9. And right now they're working on those high school curriculum links. So if you go on the website, you can click on either the social studies component or the science component and find the curriculum links there. And I would also be remiss if I didn't bring to your attention the EcoSchools Canada in Calgary program. So through something called Calgary Schools for Climate Action, ACE in the City of Calgary has worked very closely with the CBE and the Catholic Board to bring a consistent program for all Calgary schools to work on different environmental or climate initiatives, and then to be able to report that cumulatively. As Michelle said, it's like so important for students to know that they're making a difference and that they're part of collective actions. So EcoSchools Canada is free for all Calgary schools, regardless of which board, public or private or charter. It's an environmental certification school program for schools, but you can just be at a participant level, or you can go gung-ho and get all the way to platinum. It has a library of 40 different eco actions, and many of them actually support learning and action around the waste reduction area. So just as Stephanie was talking about, just conducting a waste audit gets you points within EcoSchools. Almost everyone's having a waste-free lunch now because they're bringing everything home. So signing up, you'd already be a couple actions in and be able to report that cumulatively with other Calgary schools. The other neat thing is that it's a ready to roll out program. Each eco action comes with its own guide, which makes it really easy for teachers to get started. And schools earn their points towards certification by completing the actions. And you can get bronze, silver, gold, or platinum. Right now, we've got 22 schools registered in Calgary, which we're really excited about, even in a year of COVID. The Alberta Council for Environmental Education has also worked with our local environmental education community, like Green Calgary, to identify local resources to support each of these available eco actions. So to learn more, you can visit the ACE website. And then just also a quick reminder that it's not too late to join some of the other sessions offered as part of this environmental symposium. Leah has been so kind as to put a link in the chat to the rest of the schedule, and we'll be offering 4 more sessions tomorrow. So if you're interested in topics around biodiversity, or you want to get deeper in waste as we talk about cradle to grave for the older students, please join us tomorrow. So I'd like to also thank, on behalf of ACE, their funders who generously support their work to help teachers to infuse more environmental education into their everyday teaching. Of course, without funder support, none of this would be possible. And then to wrap it all up, we really hope that you've enjoyed our session. So if you'd like to follow up with any of us individually, we've provided our emails here. We've also posted a couple of times in the chat, but I'll ask Leah to do it again. If you'd like all the resources and the PowerPoint and links associated with this session, please just go to the ACE website and you need to just enter in your name and email address, and we'll send it over to you. But if you'd also like to answer some of the optional questions, we'd love to hear your feedback. And we thank you in advance, because the feedback's really valuable in making sure that we continue to provide value to you as teachers and to improve our workshops. So once again, thank you so much for joining us, and we do hope you enjoy the rest of the convention. So I'll ask Leah just to turn off the recording, and then we can turn it over for any further questions.